Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Climbing Sycamores podcast, where we look at today's topics to get a better view of Christianity. I'm Annie Beege, and I'm joined by my friends Ben Sadler and Matt Harbach. Well, welcome, everyone, to Climbing Sycamores. Dry January continues for me.
How do you feel?
I feel fine. I don't feel much different. I mean, I guess maybe not as tired. But, yeah, I don't know. I've been out like 3 or 4 times. I've been out very late, 3 a.m.
Drinking Red Bulls.
Non-alcoholic River West Stein is my go-to now.
Oh, cool.
And it's actually pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah. So there does seem to be a push in the liquor industry for more health-conscious choices. So now we're seeing a lot more. I mean, Dave does that for a living. He's a liquor sales guy. So they're having a conference about all the new, like, health-conscious products that are coming out with lesser and no alcohol.
Do we really need antioxidants in our alcoholic beverage?
Well, no, less about the antioxidants and more about the no alcohol. So it's like no alcohol or very little alcohol.
Yeah.
So there's wines that have no alcohol. There's, new
Isn't
beers.
that called grape juice?
Yeah, maybe.
I think they invented that a long time ago.
I appreciate, like a mocktail. I think the sugar thing, that's the hard part, is
Agreed.
how do you find drinks that aren't just totally laced with
Right.
sugar?
What is an antioxidant?
A blueberry.
No.
It's
Blueberries are rich
Vitamin.
in antioxidants.
Yes. Vitamin E, D.
I think they fight
B.
against free radicals in your system. Look it up.
Super helpful.
Look it
Thanks.
up.
I just
I
know I
don't
should
think
be.
I.
Pretty
For
sure
a
there's
while,
nothing
for a
radical
while they
about
were
my
like
system.
the rage. I've heard that they're really not. They're not as significant. Like, this isn't the thing that's going to be the fountain of
to
youth.
stop you from getting cancer.
Yeah, but supposedly they're healthy.
It's just blueberries, people. We knew it all along. Just eat blueberries. Don't get cancer.
Broccoli, all that.
Yeah.
Stuff
Crap,
has
I hate broccoli.
antioxidants. Yeah.
I think it's all it's mumbo jumbo.
It's not. Just
Yeah.
eat a raw, you have fruits and vegetables, less processed foods, that whole thing, which is cool.
It is cool.
No.
If we really want to go down this road, I got a whole list of health ideas,
and
but I've
don'ts.
already
Yeah,
done that.
We'll
so
do
we don't
that.
want to go
Yeah,
to
we could do that another
superfoods.
one. Yeah.
Okay. So dry January for Annie, and what are we calling your thing?
Low energy January.
Yeah, no energy drinks. What's that like for you? How's that going?
I'm fine. I mean, I
Do you think you sleep better now?
don't think it has much to do with the caffeine. People always assumed that because they would always see me with one that I would drink like maybe one a week.
Oh,
Like, I wasn't really addicted to caffeine at all.
It
One a
seemed like
week?
more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
your
But
pocketbook is probably better.
well, yeah, I don't know. It didn't have, I don't have caffeine withdrawals or anything like that. It's
Okay.
just like sometimes you just want the extra zip,
There you
a
go.
little pep in your step.
I feel like when I do a lot of coffee, I'll feel withdrawals when I stop. But any of those kinds of drinks are usually, a lot of them are green tea. That's where a lot of the caffeine comes from. I don't feel like I get the withdrawals as much.
On that note, my kombucha is going to be ready tomorrow, so I'll make sure to bring
Have you
some in.
named your SCOBY?
I did. His name is Scooby. Scooby the Scoby. Yes. The kids are terrified of it. I'm mildly terrified of it. It lives in the basement. It's really awful. No, it's not right. It's very terrifying. But I'll bring some in.
That sounds great.
It'll be good.
I'd love to try it.
Yeah.
That is another. It kind of feels like you're drinking alcohol. It has some
Or
of the
soda.
the
Like-
same properties.
Fermented and
Fermented.
Funguses, just you're not supposed to eat.
I don't think that's a fungus,
funguses
technically.
eat you. It's like rock paper scissors. Okay, animals eat fungus. We eat animals. Fungus eats us.
No.
Okay, and it's not meant to work the other way
I
around.
don't think a SCOBY is a fungus.
I'm pretty sure it is. It's growing.
It
in there.
creates good bacteria in your gut.
good bacteria. That's another one of those. Good lord.
Isms.
All right.
All right. Anyway.
Anyways, what do you want to talk about, Annie?
Well, I want to talk about cuss words and should we as Christians cuss?
No. No, we should not.
Why?
Oh, that's bull.
because let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth.
Okay.
Well, and I think we have to define that, right? So
Do nothing that gives offense. Do nothing that tampers with someone's conscience.
great, and I'm all here for that. Like there are certain people I will not cuss in front of.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people that
because you can tell who has
I
a
let
sensitive
fly.
conscience. You can just tell.
He's glaring at me. Well, I know it's not you, so. No, I just think I think it's about knowing your audience. I think it's about your intention. If you're literally cursing someone, like, go to hell, or
right.
that's a lot different than, oh, what the hell,
Okay.
or like, yeah, I just feel like you have to know the context, know your audience. Don't offend somebody's conscience if you suspect that they, but if somebody's dropping some type of word first, I'm like, oh, free and clear.
I don't know if it was the stories my wife said it, or I think it was my wife when she was a little kid, was sitting in the back seat of a car and some relative was in there. She must have been 4 or 5, and she said, I know all the cuss words. So what is the use? Why do you feel the need to talk like that?
Well, I think it's not a need per se. I think sometimes it's more of an emphasis or whatnot.
Does this go back to what we talked about last time on anger?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes, but
Okay.
not always.
Okay.
Like, so when I kind of did a little search, and like James 3:10-11 came up. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be.
Correct.
Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? And I think it's about cursing in my head. A word is just a word.
Sure.
The intention behind the word or the way in which you're using the word is more of the problem than the word itself.
Sure.
I think that way. I don't know that that's accurate.
For me, there's a couple different reasons why I don't feel like it's necessary. One, you have like the cursing, and I think that could be unhelpful, and it could be sinful in many different ways. And then just like a practical thing, I think if somebody's just flying off the handle or just using vulgar language, it doesn't come across as somebody that I would look up to or wise. Like, that's your vocabulary? You don't have any other adjectives that you could come up with?
Right.
And so I don't know if it's necessarily a sinful thing, but I guess, is this wise? Like, does this really make you look like somebody that's worth following? And
I know Dave's mom has the argument of like, especially when it comes to songwriting and things like that, like, do you not have any other, like, are you really that uncreative that's
Sure.
all you can say as your default,
And what does the swear word represent? I mean, usually it's some kind of sexual thing or like you said, bringing curses down on somebody. Vulgar words for bodily functions. I mean, it's just, what does that word represent? I can't think of one that would be helpful or encourage, or more vivid than just the word, or why would you use it? Matt, you got a potty mouth. You tell us what you think.
Well, if you think about it, it seems like there's very little justification for cussing. I don't like. There's an argument. I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like, if you start from saying like, how should I or if you start by saying, should I adjust, like, okay, I'm doing my thing. Should I adjust the way I present myself for other people? I think if you start like that, you can kind of say, well, no, it's not a big deal. But that's an attitude that's putting you first. And if you take an attitude that says, like, I'm going to do everything I can to live how God wants me to live, and so I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to build my life according to what He wants, where do you find yourself adding, and I should also curse sometimes?
Well, it's not a matter of. I mean, I think it's from my head. It's not about I should or should not. It's more about.
Is it wrong or what?
Is it wrong? Is it wrong or yes? What kind of image are you, giving off?
Mm-hmm.
Are you offending people? Are you offending their conscience?
Mm-hmm.
What good can come out of it?
I just wonder, like, if I'm preaching, and then, no cussing while I'm preaching, and then there's a hot mic. I sometimes forget to turn off my mic, and I lean over and say something to Bill, and the whole congregation hears me.
Do you lose credibility?
Yeah, I don't think there'd be any reason for me to talk differently than how I preach. I think you can still be funny. I mean, is there any added value? I mean, I could still show anger. I could still show sadness. I could still, bring up an argument. I can't think of a time where like a well-placed cuss word is going to add any value.
Yeah.
I still think you can be funny.
And if you cuss behind closed door, you say, I'm not going to cuss while I preach. Well, when should you?
Yeah.
That's kind of my, like,
I remember.
when is it a good idea?
I think, I don't know if it was Bill Clinton or I think it was George W. Bush. Like there was a hot mic on him and he was like, he got done with a speech and then somebody else got up and he was like, that guy's a complete. And he just went on.
What was he?
I think like asshole or something like that. Yeah. And it was a hot mic and, it just didn't show him in the right kind of light. And
Well, he was also name calling too. Sure. That's something else where the intention behind it.
Sure.
Like for me in my head, there is one cuss word. There is only one. It's the N word.
Oh, that you wouldn't say.
That I wouldn't.
Okay,
no,
I see
right.
what you're saying.
And that is not under. That is both under friendly fire or non-friendly fire.
You would never say that.
No, in a song,
correct.
No, we are not saying that. Like that to me is a cuss word.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the intention behind it is, whether it's again you're quoting a song lyric, or you say it amongst your peers or what have you.
Yeah,
that is not okay in my mind.
Right.
And so the intention behind that word, no matter what it is wrong in my
Correct.
head. So whereas I feel more conflicted with other words, traditional cuss words, because to me that's just a word.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't give it too much thought. And again, as long as you're not calling somebody, go to hell, you're an asshole, that kind of stuff, that's different, than
right.
Yeah, I mean, I've called myself an a-hole, repeatedly.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know how helpful that is.
It's half in jest,
Interesting. I can't think of a good reason for it.
Except that it might ruin your credibility.
Yeah,
as a
I would
Christian.
just think, I think there's too many risks. There's too many unhelpful things. And I think, even, like comedians who it hasn't hurt their career to be clean. Like I think people thought, well, you have to cuss to be funny or you have to cuss to be a good musician. Like, I don't know if any of those things add value or if you're trying to add shock value, I guess, but people aren't shocked by it. Oh, another thing I was going to say is I think it's interesting, maybe not just with cuss words, but how language keeps changing as to what offends people now. That you watch an old episode of The Office, and I think Steve Carell said, we could never have started The Office today because how much language has changed. And I think it's been pretty universal that the word you mentioned has been offensive for decades now. But there's all sorts of other things that, you watch old episodes like, oh, you couldn't say that today. So that's another challenge is just trying to keep up with what's politically correct. And I don't know if that's because of how small our world is getting, how easily offended people are, but language is a challenging thing. So I don't know. I don't think I could justify it in my normal speech. I think, I don't think it would be helpful. I think I could lose credibility very quickly, lose an opportunity to share the gospel. And
okay.
But if I smash my finger, it's hard not to say something. Good on that one?
Do you have more, Matt?
I was gonna add a couple years ago there was a big not around here mostly, and definitely the coasts and more liberal areas of the country. They were talking about microaggressions, and so these are things that are just kind of offensive. But I mean, so asking somebody where they're from was a microaggression.
Man.
Like you have it because they have a different accent. So you say, "Oh, where are you from?" And then you're implying, I don't even know. It's really stupid, but it's like, "Oh, you're." The thing is, I just don't have a problem. I don't see what the problem is, but
so instead of you're taking an interest in somebody to find out more about them, and then it's ostracizing them somehow.
Or another one is like saying that somebody is very well spoken, which is so funny. But it's like, but then it's like, oh, like so you implying that you were not expecting that because I'm a person of color almost.
Oh, I've heard that.
And
that makes sense to me. That makes sense.
I don't know. There was literally like.
I guess that's what I'm talking about. Like previous generations,
right? Yes.
If they would somehow have a time machine, they'd just start talking and asking questions. 50% of the things that they would be talking about would be offensive.
Yeah.
And the rules just keep on changing. Right. I think about even things that how I speak in my sermons or just how you talk with people, like just more and more careful as to what, and then not even realizing like I was no idea that was offensive. I had no idea that.
Well, we even talked about this with Mother's Day.
Yeah, right.
Because Mother's Day is a really stressful, sad time for some people who can't be mothers or who were mothers, whatever it is. And that's another thing that just is seemingly innocuous.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you have to kind of like layer in some caveats and some asterisks into what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really the challenge today is, on one hand, all the swear words that you could come up with probably aren't offensive to many people, but then these other kind of questions or ideas or, those are the things that are offensive. So the rules just keep on changing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think like singular words are becoming less and less offensive, and it's more like trying to. It's always people trying to judge other people's motivation for saying things. You get into so much trouble when you try to say, "Oh, they said that, and I bet this is what they meant."
And maybe that goes back to just the lack of real relationships, the lack of trust, that there's so many assumptions. I would assume that like if I would say something offensive to you guys, you'd be like, "Oh, that's weird," but hopefully like it comes from it's just being ignorant or something, right? Like but yeah, if you don't know the person, if you get it in a text or you have these assumptions that you know what they say about assuming something. It makes
What's that? Was that a cuss word about to come out?
Boy.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, okay.
All right. Well,
we got a mind bender here.
Oh man. So if you're not up to date on Twitter or whatever, you might not know that there's something brewing. I keep on asking my wife, who's a teacher, about this, and they're not discussing it yet at their school, but Chat GPT is an AI program.
What does GPT stand for?
I don't even know.
I'm going to look it up.
Thank you. Where you can plug in anything into this free program and it will write essays. It will come, so a friend of mine, Andrew, he's an English teacher. And so he put in Chat GPT, write a 250-word body paragraph for a personal statement that uses a montage structure using the theme of hiking boots that mentions names of specific trails and talks about specific experiences with a brother. Use specific sensory detail similar to dust from the trail coats my arms and mixes with sweat and sunscreen. Begin the paragraph with an image, use highly detailed specific anecdotes that demonstrate values, use witty, sophisticated tone, incorporate puns, end the paragraph with a complete or a complex insight. And so you put all this information in. Now you can change all that. Say, now I want you to write an essay, but write it from like a fourth grader. Or you can say, now change this into a Shakespearean sonnet, and it'll do it right. But just plugging in this is what came back. As I laced up my hiking boots, the familiar creak of leather echoes through the silence of my room. Each knot is tied with purpose. Each pull a reminder of the adventures to come. I think back to the first time I stepped foot on the trails, a timid child following my brother's footsteps. We've since traversed the rocky terrain of Mount Tamalpais, I don't know how you say that, and the towering peak of Yosemite. It's smarter than me. Our boots leaving the trail of memories in the dust. And it goes on and on. I mean, just like, it's had these quotes, and it's just like really good writing. And it's instantly, you can say, write an essay on To Kill a Mockingbird, and it'll come up with a 350-word essay or whatever.
Wow.
And then in every third paragraph, make an error so it seems like a fourth grader wrote it. And then so, I mean, when you start to think about this, you can plug in, write a test, a math test, or write an English test with multiple choice answers. Write a curriculum. You could literally put in anything, and it's the same technology that they've used for developing. At least this is what Andrew Gerlach told me. The chess programs that have kind of developed the best chess moves, but now this is information, the best way to write, the best way to respond. So, man, there's just so many different ways we could go with this. I could write for this week. I could say, write a sermon from a Lutheran perspective on John 13. Or I could say, write it from an Arminian. Write it from a cool, hip pastor perspective. And it could churn out this whole sermon without doing any of the research myself.
Hey, sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, so GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Okay.
Whoa. That's pretty wild.
So it's going to take a while for us to get our brains around this. Just wondering, what are your initial responses? So, we just had our retreat on Monday, and Michael Babler used Chat GPT for one of his slides. He said, why are we doing digital ministry? And then he had this whole big paragraph that explained why millennials and Gen Z generation are going to interact more with the digital ministry. And then he says, oh, by the way, that was written by AI, that whole paragraph. So what are some of your thoughts, your concerns? What does this do to your brain? What do you think this does for education? What does this do for our jobs? Any of those things?
I think what's going to come next is they're going to develop software that can read things and then just give you bullet points. So it'll read a whole paragraph and summarize it for you, so that you can just read a book paragraph by paragraph,
Yeah,
and then,
I mean, that's already happening. A lot of tools already
Cliff
summarize. Yeah, right. That's been going on.
But we make those.
Yeah,
And
that you can type into give me a summary. That's
wow.
So, but yeah, taking in information. But what about creative? So I guess I compared a little bit to what the calculator did to math. Now you don't have to do all the work of coming up with a problem and an answer. The calculator does it for you. Now you really don't have to come up with the writing. It will do all the writing for you. And one of my favorite things to do is write. I love to write. I get into the zone with writing. And is there anything I'm going to write that's going to be any better than that if I put in the right explanations? Probably not. Do I still do it? That's one thing. What is this going to do for educators? What are you teaching kids now? Do you really need to teach them how to write an essay, or are you just going to teach them how to think on their own? So yeah, we can go a lot of different directions.
Well, two
with
things.
this.
I think one is the complexity of the criteria that were used in that paragraph to say what you wanted to happen. So now maybe are we focusing less on more on the instructions and the knowing what we want, and then letting the AI kind of do its thing. I don't know, because I think that the instructions were pretty complex.
Yeah.
And then also math, we talk about math and calculators, math is a little bit more objective, right? There's kind of just an answer, as opposed to like writing where there's lots of
creativity.
Yeah.
The other thought I have is it's kind of like a really good woodworker where, you could have somebody or an artist, you could have a print or even a good musician. You could have music piped in. You could have a machine build a piece of furniture and go to IKEA and get something that a machine manufactured. You could go and do all those kinds of things. But there's something in the craft. Like there's something about having live music and having the craft of the music and having the people actually play the music. Now, there's all things that can enhance it, amplify the music, and those are great things you're using the technology to amplify it, but you're still creating. And so I think how I could use this as, writing and generating ideas and things, but I still want to do the craft of participating in it. Hopefully it maybe gets ideas faster and maybe clearer. And right now I use Grammarly. I have a paid subscription to that. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of like
everybody knows what that is.
All right.
Yeah.
It's on every
We've
ad.
seen the
It's
ads.
always, but I think it's great where it's just helped my writing, where it shows how to make writing. And I don't always agree with it, but at least here's how it would be clear. Here's how it'd be more helpful. So I think what we all have to do is figure out what value am I actually bringing to the marketplace that can't be done by AI. And that's going to be harder because I think I heard a podcast yesterday. It's like, in the next 10, 15 years, 40% of the jobs right now in the market are going to be gone because of AI. So are there other values that you bring to the marketplace?
No.
I wonder how many times this input comes out good. Like,
I got pages and pages of incredible
I'm
good
sure,
writing.
but these are examples, like how many times do you have to put in, a set of criteria before you get like a good one?
Oh, but even if it's not great, give it 2 years. They'll fine tune it. It'll be amazing.
What does this mean?
Yeah, it's kind of going to break your brain. I think, so I read Seth Godin wrote how this might change education. And so he suggests that what we should be doing is have your students, and I wonder even biblically if we're trying to teach people God's word, like you watch a Bible Project video, some of the best teaching that's out there by one of the best teachers, and they use really incredible graphics, or go watch The Chosen, really good stuff that's out there. And then when we gather together, you're not going to listen to a lecture, but we're going to guide an interactive discussion. We're going to guide, and so the value is in the discussion, the debate. That's how he says, the growth, the creativity. But we don't need people to just write a mediocre essay anymore because AI can do that.
Well, Matt and I were talking about it too in songwriting. Is like somebody had posted, right? Like they had put in wanting to write a song, and they wrote, I don't know, write me a Christian song that says X, Y, and Z, and it was like legit.
Yeah.
The music wasn't there, but the lyrics were there, and the format was just right, like what you'd normally hear coming out of like an Elevation or Maverick City, and it's just like, dude,
right, exactly. So then what do I do, right? Or, how can I... So there's just a lot of questions on what... The reason I'm bringing this up, too, is because I just preached a sermon on the printing press. And 500 years ago, Martin Luther used the printing press to proclaim a message about the gospel. And if it wasn't for the printing press, that message would not have spread throughout the world, and there would be no Reformation. There'd probably still only be one Catholic Church, and so now the question is, as new technology comes into our world, how do we embrace it in service to others? How can this serve the greater good? And that, I think that's the question we have to keep on asking. Now, it's so new. This is just hot off. The crazy thing is how quickly this was developed. Like a lot of this technology took years and decades. I mean, the calculator used to be a thing that the computers would fill up a whole room, and then it took decades to bring down to something you put in your pocket. This was developed, I think, in months.
Why don't we ask it what we're supposed to do with it?
You could. It's actually down right now. I think it's been so heavily populated that it's shut down right now.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know what it has to say about how do we most efficiently, and how do we make this most productive? Why are you taking our job?
Take me to your leader.
Yeah. I know. I'm just waiting. Yeah.
I do think that's the value of podcasts and vulnerability and honesty. Like, what is unique is our human experience, our core values, our conversations. That is still something that is human that we bring to the table.
It is about relationships, right?
It's about relationships, yeah.
Because the AI can't or can it provide you company? Or just, the AI can't cook your family dinner when you're going through a, struggle, or, just stuff like that.
I think
it will.
You think so?
Yep.
What was from the Jetsons? What was that? Betty? What was her name? Who was the robot?
Robot. I don't know.
I know what you're talking about, though.
So I'd be interested, from any of our listeners to hear what they're doing. I'd like to talk to teachers and how this is going to impact their work. And I think we're going to have to really clarify what we want out of people. How do we want them to grow? The real issue for me is we're purpose-driven creatures. And if you take away someone's work, they feel like they don't have a purpose. So how do we help people find a new purpose and a new way to have something of value to offer to the world when so many of the things that we find purpose in are being taken away? So what of value can you still offer? And I think that's going to be the challenge in the world to come. Are you guys all depressed or excited? I don't know.
I'm a people person, so I don't feel threatened by this at all. I mean, I shouldn't say it all. I do, but I this thing can't replace my relationships.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I was actually just heard a podcast, and I want to read the book now, but there was a study done it was like a longitude study over a 40-year period, and they did two studies simultaneously. One was kind of like Ivy League people who grew up in those schools and in those kind of homes, and then inner city poverty. And they studied these groups for over 40 years, and it was, I don't know if it was called the Happiness Project or something like that. And they found the one thing that created the most amount of longevity and happiness and health, more than your food, more than your exercise, more nutrition, more any of those kinds of other things that we usually think as happiness and longevity, was relationships. That the people who had relationships were the healthiest, happiest people, which is frightening because I think that's one of the things that we're lacking more than ever today. So that's what we're going to need to figure out. So yeah, I think you're right. The relationships are everything. They really are. What do you think about Matt?
Matt's shivering in his boots.
I don't do a lot of writing.
Oh, no, it's just about relationships.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to die by 40. I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted. Like you said, are we going to not be able to really teach people how to write anymore if they're just going to, and part of me thinks it's like transmission on a car. Like I can't drive a stick shift car and I will never need to. And I'm at peace with that because I don't care.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, you kind of lost that skill, but it's like, I don't know why I need it.
Right.
At the same time, we talked plenty about Facebook and how everyone was like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to connect with each other and communicate and be great friends. And no,
it hasn't turned out that way. Yeah. The question is, what are the skills that, if you were a mathematician in the NASA program 30, 40 years ago, before the computers churned out all the math for you, you were really needed. But once those computers came in, they didn't need you anymore. So what are the skills that are going to be most needed? I think still communication. Like, you still need people who are able to communicate verbally and on video and with each other. That's going to, emotional intelligence is going to be so many people are really struggling emotionally. I think anything we can do to have people skills and emotional skills, those are skills that are going to be really important. Obviously the skills and technology are really important. I think curating, like, all right, how do I get all this information, use it properly, and then be able to package it in a way that there's so much information out there. How do we help people focus on what actually matters? And I think that's another skill that's going to be needed. But it's pretty crazy. I do believe that God still created us to be creative, and so I think we still need to get into creative endeavors. Yes, you could print off a painting with a laser printer, but there's something beautiful about painting it with hand. Yes, you could have AI write a book, but there's going to be something beautiful about writing it yourself. Yes, you could have a machine build all of your whatever, beds and cabinets and everything, or you could make it by hand. There's going to be still something in the craft that's going to be enjoyable. So I think that's not going to go away because God created us to be creative. And so,
I think too, just we want to take furniture, for example. Let's take like Amish made furniture, right? I feel like it's of certainly a better quality
right,
than the IKEA furniture.
Right.
And so maybe that's kind of akin to this where, this is good, but this paragraph that you create, or that was, right, I don't know who did it, but it's kind of cringy.
Right.
Like, and I feel like this is the IKEA furniture.
Yeah.
Where we need, the real skilled writers are going to be the Amish craftsmen, like of the solid furniture.
That's right. And so are you going to have a stamp on it? Like, just like it's made by hand, or, that's going to be created without AI, or,
Maybe.
So
or this idea of like mass production, like it's easy to kind of mass produce, this kind of not great furniture, and it's cheap, and it's easy, and it's fast, but it's not as the quality over quantity type thing. So I think there might be room for both to exist.
I still think you're going to need critical thinking. You're still going to need debate and discussion. And hopefully, Steve Jobs was quoted saying that when he designed the computer, it was supposed to be a bicycle for your brain. So what he meant, what he means by that is it's supposed to take you farther faster, but it's not going to take away from your life. Just like you're still manually pedaling that bike. It's not a car, but you're still using force, and you're still growing, but you're able to go farther, faster than if you were walking or running by yourself. And so hopefully that's what this does, is you can write a better book, you can come up with better ideas, get to deeper truth using this as almost a bicycle for your brain. And hopefully it doesn't just turn into an autopilot. I'm going to turn this, because I think who's going to want to read that either? Because they're going to think, oh, you didn't come up with that anyways. You probably didn't read it yourself. Why would I read something that you didn't even participate in? We use a lot of tools when I was in college for language study. I mean, before my time, we had books, and there's books and books that you had to look up a term in a dictionary, a Hebrew word, and then you had to it was hours and hours just trying to get through the different grammars and dictionaries to come up with what this word actually meant in its historical context, and then the grammatical syntax and all that stuff. Now we have programs that you just hover over the Greek word and it churns out all that stuff. I think that's helped us get to the root of the verse quicker, but you probably don't have that skill of having that whole bank of words in your brain that the previous generation did. So, but I think we can be even better preachers now because of it. So,
yeah, we'll see what happens.
Interested in people's feedback on that. Matt, ¿qué quiere decir? What do you want to say?
So, I wanted to talk about secular versus Christian music. You guys both watched that really short clip. And I first wanted to ask, what is Christian music?
It's good. I've heard different authors or artists who talked about whether it's a book or a music, like who your primary audience is. Like, I'm a Christian who writes music, or I'm a Christian who makes movies. I'm a Christian, and I have these underlying themes that kind of, and then I think when I hear Christian music, I think of a hymn or a song that's written for worship that is not just written from a worldview, but written for Christians to participate in and enhance their faith or participate in worship. So I guess that would be, I think there's a difference between a Christian who writes music that's trying to maybe tell a message that would grab a wider audience that's not so on the nose, and then which I think can be even more powerful sometimes, and then a Christian music.
I'm inclined to agree with that, I think.
So in the video, the person said you don't necessarily have to look at whether it's Christian or secular, but to focus on the message of the music. And so that one's tough for me. Some music I feel I wouldn't call it a message in all cases.
No, stories.
Just thinking of songs that I like, it's like, is there a message there? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Is music trying to tell you something? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think whether you pick it up or not, even if it's random, I think like a lot of the postmodern music that was just like random noise and stuff, that message was that this world is chaos. There's no point to it. Most of the stuff that came out of the 90s had that kind of, it had no message whatsoever. But I think most artists are writing things that are trying to send a message. Now, the bad ones that kind of become popular music, like I still don't know what any NSYNC song or Britney Spears song is. Like, what is that? Like you listen to lyrics, like I have no idea what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Oops,
do you listen?
Oops, I did it again.
What'd you do? Yeah, what did you do again?
With your
Played
heart.
with your heart, got lost in the game.
Ooh, baby.
What do you mean you don't know?
I think most music is trying to tell a message. Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like some music is just trying to kind of encapsulate a feeling. Or
Sure, that's still a message though.
So
trying to move you in a direction.
Well, so the one that stuck out to me, because in the video they talked about, if the message is positive, encouraging, uplifting, right, then it's good music to listen to. But I'm thinking like some people like to listen to music that is sad when they're sad.
Sure.
And
Everybody
that music
hurts.
can be beautiful.
Sometimes.
It's like, so what's the message of a sad song?
Well, what kind of sad are we? I mean, I can think of songs that touch on like everything, and I think this is why I listen to everything, and it's because music can tell us a lot about humanity.
Yeah.
Feelings.
Oh yeah.
Love, loss, addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, community, culture, like.
Yeah.
And so you can
hope, despair.
Yeah, everything. You know, like I'll pick on Tupac. Like, he's there's some songs, yeah, like Hit 'Em Up, very, very, very inflammatory.
Right.
And I think we may have touched on this in an earlier podcast, but very inflammatory, very diss track, very not nice. But then we look at some of his other works, probably the more popular ones, the Dear Mama and the Changes, things like that, where he's talking about his community, what it's like to be, to have a mother who's working, who, you know, there's a feeling of despair there, you know, like in the community that he lives in, you know. And so I think, yeah, I mean, you can learn so much about humanity from music and the things that people are writing.
Yeah.
There's another song I was thinking about earlier today is by the Lumineers, and it's called Brightside. And I envision this is a story about a couple that is like drug addicted, vagabond, moving from hotel to hotel. Woman loses custody of her kids. Like, it's just a really sad. It's like really sad. But we know that these things exist.
Right.
Otherwise, there would be no song written about it.
And that's what good art does, right? It uncovers, it reveals something, sometimes subtly, but it teaches about human nature. So I think
Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. I mean, sheesh, you know, like, so I don't know if we want to look at things in terms of, I don't know that I necessarily see a message in some of these songs that I don't see consciously.
Yeah.
But they're definitely telling stories and telling about humanity and telling us about things that we might not even know are happening or that we're very distant from.
And that is the power of music, is like, I think some of it is even subconsciously. You don't understand why you love this song so much, but it's resonating at an emotional level, even if you don't intellectually understand what's all going on. So I think it's back to the Reformation, Martin Luther, like, people said it was not his Bible translation or even his other tracks or writing, but it was his music that really moved the hearts of people to change. And so so what are you getting at? I guess, what is your concern or your thoughts? Or
I'm just struggling to find. Well, it actually, so you were right. It is a lot like cussing, like
conscience.
Does
it affect your conscience?
That whole like, where's the line thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so first of all, you have to decide what is Christian and what is secular. Actually, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have to decide, but you do have to decide what you're going to listen to. And if you say like, oh, these are songs that are telling human stories, I totally agree with you, but that doesn't mean that maybe they're very negative. Maybe they're incredibly vulgar, depressing.
And if you can't handle it, not you specifically, but if you are a person who is sensitive, who doesn't, want to deal with it or can't deal with it, then it's much like watching the news. How much can you tolerate? If you can tolerate it and your conscience, and you're not influenced by it, and your conscience isn't offended. Maybe my conscience is calloused. I don't know.
We've already established that. That's been a whole year we've been talking about that. It's therapy for Annie. For me, the most dangerous music, movies, television that portray something that's true, that's a lie. Like, I really appreciate what you were talking about, some of these sad stories, but there's still a truth that we're supposed to, this is hard, but can we help? Or how to, maybe we'll look at somebody in that situation and not be so judgmental because we realize where they're coming from, or what, something like that. But I think, we talked about this before, like 2.5 Men, that TV show, portrayed on the TV show that you could sleep around and that this is funny and fun and Friends, same kind of thing. Like, oh, let's just all sleep together and there's no consequences for this kind of life. But the reality behind Martin Sheen and what he was doing, Charlie, behind the scenes, was destroying his life. And so that's where I think can be the most detrimental. Like, I don't mind hard stories or right now I'm reading 1984 by George Orwell. It's just like, it's a good one. It's really hard, but it's art that's bringing out a truth of what happens when communism and government control take over, and what that does to take away people's humanity. It's really hard and painful and sad. And the Bible's got really hard and painful and sad stories. Read the book of Judges. But for me, the most powerful work of the devil is to portray truth as a lie and lie as a truth, and then move people to live in an unreality that's going to eventually hurt them and lead to less flourishing in the world. But because it's got a good lyric and we think, oh, there's something, the devil's always telling half truths. There's like something true about that, but then it's not the complete truth, and that's what I think is the worst part of art.
Or where we glorify things that really just should not.
Exactly.
Some of the yeah.
And the thing about art though is you can. Everyone's trying to get to a place of like hope or the ideal or the utopia or whatever. Either you're pointing out something bad so that we would do something different, or you're pointing out what could be if you would follow this song or art or whatever. The problem is when you paint this could be a great future if we all got behind this, but if we really got all behind this, would actually destroy it. Like, maybe the picture of communism, like this could be really great. We all put our money in together and the government hands it out. This could really be great. Like, that's a great story, but it's always caused death and mass problems and I think people they don't know history today, and so they're getting behind this again because they've been told a story that sounds nice and it's put together in a really artistic, sometimes musical, lyrical, cinema, in cinema and things like that. But that's what I think is the most detrimental.
But it's personal and relative, I think, to what you can tolerate.
Yeah, right. I don't mind watching hard movies. Usually that's like when Emily's out of town, I'll watch some harder, deeper, more emotionally driven. Like she wants to watch.
And we know you just like Hallmark.
That's
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
That's all we watch at our house. But when I get, a lot of Notebook in our house. But when everybody's out of town, like I love like getting into the deep and even the hard stuff because it teaches about human nature and what's real, and if you can handle that, right? And because I think when you can look at how life can honestly be hard, and you still have hope that there's a way out, I mean, that's where you want to be.
Sure. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, and I think the decision and the distinction is a lot easier to make when the author, the writer, the creator, etc., has some perspective. Like, what's that song, Cats in the Cradle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of got, like, it's kind of sad, but it's got, like, some perspective behind it. But then you take there's, like, a whole genre of music, like screamo, heavy metal, a lot of which is written, it's just, like, anger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, the lyrics probably aren't very positive or uplifting.
Yeah.
It's also not about the lyrics.
It's about the emotion.
It's about the emotion, and it connects with a lot of people.
Right. But there's also some really heavy music that can lead people to get excited about, doing something positive. It can be hard or emotional music that maybe has a similar tone, but if the person behind it is telling a message of let's get after it, let's do something that matters. I mean, I think Skillet's one of those where it's like really hard rock kind of music, very black in their when they're in concert and dark, but they have a message of hope in the middle of it, which is just interesting. And they'll tour with Korn or some of those other bands that were, but they're Christians. They don't necessarily have Christian music, but they're Christians behind it. So they tell these really dark stories, but then they have a lot of about hope. So yeah. I don't know. So I think that's where maybe pastors, Christians, leaders, we have to look at like what is not just at what is the fault, like the bad language count in this movie, or what is the motive behind it, and are we trying to portray the truth as a lie, or are we trying to show how hard life really is, and no matter how grotesque or hard that really is, it's time. Movie Schindler's List or something like that, really hard, but it was trying to teach a truth that this is what happens when we start, putting people in categories. But yeah, so is it true? I think that's the bigger question.
Well, I think that's enough for all of our listeners to think on. So.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
God bless you guys.
If you'd like to get a hold of us here at the Climbing Sycamores podcast, feel free to email bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. If you like today's intro music, it's been brought to you by Andrew Lynch's song, My Name, Hello.